Good day, folks. Rich Jacob here with Blair Lipsitz in Western New York Coaches Chalk Talk podcast. Today, we have the great pleasure of having Stu Boyer, a longtime sport broadcaster, longtime Western New Yorker, and well-respected sport director. Stu, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I've been looking forward to this all week.
Yeah, this is great. This is great to have you. As we were talking earlier before, here we are in a coaching podcast, and I think, Stu, probably, you've hit 1,000 or more coaches that you've talked to, and, we're here to get some of your insights related to all of the above, but I'll turn it over to Coach Blair to get us started.
Yeah, I think the hardest thing about today is not going to be us being interviewed. I think he's too good, and he's going to flip it back on us. So we got to keep him in the hot seat today.
I thought about that.
I'm sure you did.
It's funny because my kids I'll meet somebody, and I start asking them questions, and the girls will look at me and they'll say, "Why are you interrogating him?" And I'll just say, "Well, yeah, I'm curious. I ask questions. I want to know about people." So if I flip it around, I might flip it around a little bit.
We'll just call you out for it, right? Oh gosh. Well, I think just to start off, can we hear a little bit about you and why you got into sport broadcasting?
Primarily because I couldn't play anything.
Yeah.
I was not blessed with a great deal of athletic ability, and when I didn't make the high school baseball team, I remember walking home that day, and I was like, this is terrible. I can't lead my Cleveland Indians, now Guardians, to the World Series championship. So I thought, well, what's the best way to stay involved? So I thought broadcasting would be the ticket. And it didn't quite go as I had imagined it would, but it worked out very nicely. I always wanted to be a Major League Baseball play-by-play guy.
Yeah.
But employment came in different forms, and I liked being employed. And that's how I got to Buffalo eventually. So,
and you did work MLB games or cover them.
Well, yes, I did. And in fact, I was on the Cleveland pregame show one year because Channel 2 in Buffalo and Channel 3 in Cleveland are owned by the same corporation, and that was a career highlight, being on the pregame show with Jim Donovan.
Yeah.
Who's a great broadcaster in Cleveland, and that was just a real highlight for me. I was like, this is really cool. Here I am on an Indians pregame show, and I had grown up. My mom had a couple of sisters in Cleveland, and the Plain Dealer used to give out tickets to straight A students, and my cousins were a lot smarter than me, so we went to a lot of ball games. And that's how I became an Indian fan. I would sit in the driveway listening to the ball game with my Aunt Esther, my mom's sister, or we'd be watching the Indians on TV. So
I guess
was a thrill. That was a big thrill.
That was one of them.
them.
I guess my big question is why sports?
Good question. My sister always said that I should either write a book or run for office. I have no desire to be in the political arena. I like a private life. And I did do a bunch of news. That's how I got into it. I was a gopher at a
That's how you
radio
started?
station. Yes, go for this, go for that. At WAXC Radio 1460 in Rochester, which no longer exists, but I did meet a man there named Rich Funky, who was a long-time broadcaster in the Rochester area, and he eventually did run for political office and was a state senator here in New York. And he mentored me. My mom worked for an eye doctor, and one day she met someone who had some kind of connection to WAXC, and I don't know how. I don't remember that. And she said, well, I have a son who's interested in broadcasting. Can you help him? And this gentleman told my mother to have me call Rich Funky. So I asked him if I could come down and hang around the radio station, and so I started hanging around the radio station. So instead of an intern, I was a gopher.
Right.
The guys in the newsroom needed a candy bar or cigarettes, whatever.
Yeah.
And I would just go downstairs to the little drugstore next door on East Avenue in Rochester, buy their stuff, chips, Coca-Cola, whatever, and come back, and they would just start teaching me. Because when you're around an environment like that, you have all these professionals, so you soak it in. And then they started something Fridays and Saturdays called Waxy's Dial-A-Score. So you could call this number. There were 3 phone banks, and you could get all your professional, high school, and college sports scores. And it was, welcome to Waxy's Dial Score, brought to you by Scotty Pontiac, the area's largest Pontiac dealer. And you had like 3 minutes to talk and give your scores. And every few minutes, every hour on the hour, whatever, you would update them. And that was one of the first things I did, was you call up and people listen to your voice giving the scores.
Wow.
And the thing that was frustrating is you'd get like 2.5 minutes through, you'd be almost done, and if you want to say Washington, it would come out Washington.
Right.
So being a perfectionist, you had to start all over. And then eventually I started doing newscasts all night, and when I graduated high school, went to Monroe Community College, so I was staying home, and by that time, I'd become a desk assistant at the radio station. The senior year, my summer year, I hung out with the football team, and I got in decent shape for the first time in my life. And the day they passed out the equipment, I got a job at a radio station, and I thought, well, if I play high school football, which I'm really not going to play, I might get on the field for the extra point. Me. And I think I might have something going with radio here. So I didn't go to the day they got the equipment, and I started working at the radio station. So I would do newscasts all night long when I was 17.
Wow.
You know, it's 47 degrees at 3:54 in Rochester, and I would just basically regurgitate what everybody else had done during the day, unless there was a breaking story.
Right.
And then at the end of the week, I would pester Rich Funky. And I was a real pest, I admit. Hey, do you think you could work with me? So when my classes were done at MCC, I would drive downtown, and Rich was kind enough to work with me. Now, the first time he ever did something with me, now, here I'm a 17-year-old kid, 16. Maybe.
Right. Wow.
And here's this gentleman who I've heard on radio, and I think he's fabulous. Brilliant mind, great broadcaster. So he rips off a piece of wire copy, and he says to me, here, read this. So I read it, and there's all these other radio broadcasters sitting around. So he put me on the spot, and after I read it, he said, well, you read well, but you need to be more authoritative. And he started, that was the beginning of it.
Like how to develop your voice.
Where your inflection needs to be.
Wow.
And he would critique my writing. He was tough, but fair and fabulous. I love the man. And outside of my dad, no man had more influence than Rich Funky. I love him to this day, and I always will. Without him, do I have this career? Probably not. So
he's like your best coach.
Yeah, and no doubt. And his brother Chuck Funky, the late Chuck Funky, was a great guy who worked at Iroquois here in the Section 6 area. He was the Section 6 football chairman and a longtime coach. And it's just one of those guys that I do really miss. I don't talk to Rich that often, but I'm extremely grateful for everything he did for me. In fact, the day that Richard Nixon resigned, this is 1972.
I was just saying you're right?
Yeah. I was the only one in the Rochester market who managed to get a hold of both our congressmen, Barbara Connell and Frank Horton. And my job was on Sunday nights to fill up the rack with audio carts for Rich when he came in the morning for morning drive. So he always used to call me Stuart. And his message was very simple. That rack had better be full when I come in the morning. And do you know that after that Monday when we had reaction on tape from those two, never said another word.
Really?
Yeah, because it was like, I guess I'd arrived.
Right.
And nobody else in the market had them. So I was happy, he was happy, and I was really happy that he was happy.
Right. So much of that seems like you have to go the extra mile all the time without even recognizing you don't have a plan in place, right? It's like you have something occurs, there's breaking news, there's a breaking story, and you have to go then, okay, what angles can I go? Which angle should I choose? And then you've got to just find it out. It's not like this is your path, A, B, C, D. You've got to make it.
I don't know any lives that work.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. No lives do, but I think for young people listening to this, that's important because a lot of people want things to be set already in stone, and this is the way I'm supposed to do it. But in so many careers and so many sports and so much of life, that's not the way it really happens, right?
Yeah, I guess football quarterbacks aren't the only ones who call audibles.
Right.
Yeah, well,
You know,
We
I
don't like football very much in this town today, do we?
oh boy, challenging. And then
Challenging.
speaking of some of the articles, even this morning's, but you know, back to mentorship. I mean, I think you raised, just like you're saying, Coach Blair, a excellent point. I mean, having mentors is critical for all of us. And I think these relationships happen organically. You know, the greatest stories, like you just told, it is a great story. And we did catch that. You know, you sought him out to say,
Yeah.
"Hey, can you please?" And that's important too. Like
Being a pest is okay.
yeah, absolutely.
Well, and somebody has to respond to you being a pest.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Whether,
Right,
whether it's because they just want to get rid of you, or you know, or the real thing is you hope that they see something in you, or that you show
Yeah.
them something, right?
Right.
You know.
No, so important, and keep knocking on that door.
Yeah.
Right, or and more doors, and don't stop. Right, we have all these stories. Right, I know. You know, one of our former athletes at the University of Buffalo during the time. I mean, he had the whole wall filled with rejection letters as he was graduating, looking to break into the financial field, and I think there was 400 rejections, and then
Jeez.
finally, you know, there he was. Ended up on Wall Street. You know, great success story, but didn't stop, and had the mentors in the meantime. He speaks highly of those people, just like you do with Mr. Funk there.
I have a further story about Rich, and that is when he moved from WAXC radio to WHEC TV. When I was coming out of Syracuse in 1977, I stayed in touch. And he told me at one point, "Hey, we have a weekend spot on TV. Are you interested?" And I said, "Yeah, of course." So I made a tape for him, and he hired me to do weekend sports in Rochester, which if I hadn't known him, that would have never ever happened, and chances are I would have never come to Buffalo, and I wouldn't be sitting here.
Right.
Well, you know, I want to say, Hugh, Stu, the during my time, many years of coaching, and you know, you and I seeing each other and being around each other, that you just operated with a high level of integrity. And as a coach, there's a you know, there's a trust
Yes.
that we have to have. We don't understand the media like you do.
Yeah.
So
Never thought of that.
It's
you know,
intimidating in a lot of ways.
It absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely can be. But I want to say, when we knew it was you, and I knew it was you, I always felt a little more at ease, just because I like to just be honest. I want to respond. This is who I am. This is what we have. This is what I see. And I've had a couple moments where, boy, I thought we said a certain thing, and so forth and so on. I mean, I just want to thank you for that publicly.
Well,
Yeah.
Thank you. I tried to do the best I could by everybody. And what I always try to remember is that I wasn't the story. There are too many guys in the media who make it about them, and it was never about me. It was about this coach and what he or she was trying to accomplish with this team. And I just tried to be me and
Yeah.
do my thing and let you do yours.
Well,
Do you have a story, not stories necessarily, of coaches that maybe didn't do a great job, but maybe advice for coaches or athletes going into interviews? Or funny stories? I mean, I know I've been in a room where people just completely blank. They can't say anything. Athletes particularly, but we were in collegiate sports, so it's a little more.
I would say for athletes, coaches are great communicators.
Yeah.
They have to be, because they have a group of young people that they have to get a message across to. Coaches are great teachers. If you're a great coach, you're a great teacher, because that's what you're doing. My biggest issue with athletes at all levels, especially, learn to speak the English language. You're representing your school, your coach, your family, your name. You got a uniform on.
Right.
Right.
It's like I always worked for Channel 2, so whatever I did, I was representing
Right.
WGRZ TV. And I would like to think that if my mom was here, I'm sure she'd be correcting my grammar. But how many times do you hear people, supposedly college graduates, "I've seen this"? I said, "No, I saw
Right.
it's correct." Little things. And so learn to speak the language at
Yeah.
least, and put together cohesive sentences.
Articulate. Stu, I think when you visited as guest lecturer a few times in our sport management department, I think you delivered the same message that you just delivered now. And
Well, I might have, but one time
Yeah.
I came to your class and it was one of the most embarrassing moments of my life because everybody in the class knew more than I did about computers and cell phones.
well, me too. So
My
we're in the
3-year-old
same-
knows more than I do about my
yeah,
phone.
we were in the same boat that day. That's for sure.
But I did appreciate you inviting me, and I walked out of here with my tail tucked firmly between my legs.
No.
I
it
was
was-
like, oh my God, that was awful.
No, you were sharing real life circumstances and really the advice that you give, again, open and honest, is heeded.
No.
Heeded by our students without question.
I really needed to hear that because do not have good memories of that day. I was like, oh
Yeah.
my God.
Well,
Oh,
you've
no.
worked with, professional teams, we worked with collegiate teams. What about high school teams? You did a lot of high school sports as well.
In fact, I had the most fun with high school sports.
Really?
Well, it coincided when my kids were playing. My older daughter had a horrible experience in high school. She had a coach look at her and say, it's pointless to help you because of muscle memory.
Wow.
And I was like, what kind of coach says that to a 16-year-old girl?
Right.
Why?
And what does that mean, Coach?
Right. That was my
I mean, we understand what muscle memory is. We get that part.
Well,
But what a comment. Never heard that
Never
kind
heard
of,
that before.
You know, I'm pretty open-minded about a lot of things, but now you're talking to my kid.
Right.
And I was furious. So I said to her, I want you to say that to me 3 times. I want you to say it to me the same way Coach said it to you. And she did. And I said, now we have a problem. So I have
Yes.
to go see this guy.
Yeah.
So I went to the school they went to. My younger daughter played soccer, and they called that team Brazil because of the way they practiced. She had a fabulous coach, fabulous. To this day, I love the guy because he not only said the right thing, he showed them how to do the right thing. It was fabulous. Now this other gentleman, put that in quotes. So I went and watched practice because at the school you can see inside, so I could watch volleyball practice and I could see a little bit of soccer practice. So in 45 minutes, how many volleyballs do you think got hit?
Uh-oh. I'm leaving this to Coach.
Yeah, I
But
was just going to say that. Go ahead. This one's for you, Blair.
45 minutes? I don't know. Please tell me it's more than 0.
2.
Okay.
Wow.
2. And what my daughter had told me, I said, what do you guys do at practice? And she said, well, mostly we stand around. And I'm like, well, that doesn't sound like any coach I know anywhere because once the whistle blows, every coach I know has a plan. This is what we're going to do for 3 minutes, 5 minutes here, 7 minutes here.
Right.
So I watched. And sure enough, there was a lot of standing around, and there was no, like, from what I could see, no coach-player interaction, just the coach just standing there. And, I'm sure as coaches, you always had your eye on a player or players, and you wanted them to work on something, whether it was how they move or how they had their hands or whatever.
Every individual.
So now I set up a meeting with this coach, and I said to him, you've cheated my kid out of 2 things every player deserves. 1, you're not coaching her. 2, you're not giving her a chance to compete for playing time. Because I'd gone to some matches, and the kid in her spot kept making mistake after mistake after mistake, and I'm thinking, well, this is high school varsity sports. If I got a kid who's not getting the job done, I'm going to the next kid. There's your
Right.
opportunity. So in his brilliance, he looked at me and said, are you saying she should start? And I was like, no. So we never got anywhere, and unfortunately, she didn't play her senior year of high school. But she did play at the Buffalo Niagara Court Center, and thank God for Stephen Pierce, because she worked with a real coach who was fabulous, and she improved by leaps and bounds, and she played at ECC. She was not Blair Brown, but she's a really good kid who worked hard. And, if the coach had said to me, hey, she's not doing anything I'm asking her to do, or she's not paying attention, or
Yeah,
whatever.
right,
would have
some
been
sort
a
of issue,
different
right.
conversation that I
Yeah.
would have had with her.
Right.
But that just infuriated me, and it still does, and she hates when I tell that story.
Well,
But
I mean,
I tell it to make a point.
right. You're telling it. Yes, it was your daughter, but everybody else's daughter is there too.
Yes,
And there's a responsibility, right? As coaches, we take on a great responsibility, in the
Yes.
lives of many people, as you say.
Yes, because that's my kid, and when you go to school and the school is telling you to participate in extracurricular activities,
Right.
be involved in your school, play a sport, do
Right.
this, do that,
Yeah.
and then you get that.
Yeah.
That to me, that's unacceptable.
Did you ever cover their games?
Not that particular team.
Yeah, but your daughter's games
The
in
little
high school?
ones- the little one's soccer, yes.
Yeah.
because she was on a really good team.
Mm-hmm.
She played with the second best player to ever come out of Western New York.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Abby Wambach being the best, and Carissa Macatrona being the second best, only because she's shorter and doesn't have a flat iron head. And I say that because when my daughter played ODP, the ODP coaches also coached Carissa, and one of them was telling me that there's only one player better to ever come out of here than Carissa, and that was Abby. And and my little one's a very good soccer player. So
That's awesome.
She's Damon's leading goal scorer.
Awesome.
Career, yeah. She had 55 and 68
Wow,
games.
wow.
And 19 game winners.
Wow.
So she
Congratulations to her.
Thank you. She got the athletic talent from her mother.
That's it.
So
Wow.
did you feel like there was a push to start reporting younger and younger in youth sport over your time there? Because a lot of what we do is talk about youth sport and maybe the push to compete at too young of a level.
Well, one of the things that I had to learn was youth sports, especially, and I'll use soccer as an example because she played soccer longer than my older daughter played volleyball. There's no modified volleyball program in Williamsville,
Right.
so she's starting off from ground zero in the 8th grade. Youth soccer is about development, and as an American,
Yeah.
as an American parent, I'm thinking this has to be about winning.
Right.
So you have to wrap your head around
Yeah.
developing the individual, and I finally, eventually, figured it out. When I was at Channel 2, the corporation decided that we were going to go big into high school sports, which is fine. At first I wasn't excited, then my wife told me, just embrace this, it'll be great for you. And she, I hate to admit it, but she was right, because she usually always is.
Good to admit. It's good.
Yeah, and so we would sometimes we would get calls from parents who had players on JV teams, and I would just say, we're not going to do anything with JV teams because we need, at some point, kids still got to be kids. So we
Right.
made a conscious decision not to do that, and I would try to avoid doing anything. There's all kinds of youth sports with all these other leagues and people who
Right.
call all the time.
That are so competitive, yeah.
And I would just say, no, we're not going to do that.
Okay,
Just,
yeah.
Just because I
I don't
know
think it's bad to cover, high school sports. I think people have a huge interest in it, right?
Absolutely.
Well, the problem you run into is that the only thing that gets hits in this area are bills and sabers. That's all about web hits.
Right.
So we did high school sports for a number of years, and we did a lot of them. And
You
it was
did.
great.
You
and
really
I had
did.
A lot of fun, and we built up a real good audience. And then they came to me one day and said, we're not going to do this high school stuff anymore. And I'm like, I didn't know what to say or do. I worked for them.
Yeah.
They didn't want to do it. I wasn't
Yeah.
going to do it. But it was a major disappointment. And now, we just had a team from Section 6 play for a New York State championship.
Yes.
Now, I do games for a site, Western New York Athletics, which is on Facebook and
Right.
Twitter. And I'm having the time of my life doing those games. I did that game in the Carrier Dome Saturday, and I was looking, but I didn't see any cameras from Channel 2, 4, or 7, or even Spectrum. So if they got highlights, they had to call somebody in Syracuse.
Somebody else.
And I didn't watch any TV news when I got back, so I don't know if anybody even ran highlights. But that's a City of Buffalo team playing for a New York State
Yeah.
championship, which
Right.
if you're going to cover high school, you got to cover that, right? I was there when South Park won.
Awesome.
That was before I got kicked off of Twitter, so I was
Yeah.
trending on Twitter. And it was a great day when South Park won. But my
It
point
was.
is, it's like, I don't know. Channel 4 does a little bit with high school. They have a very nice young woman named, I think her name is Mary Margaret Johnson. Channel 7's always done the high school athlete of the week. I think they still do that. And I don't Channel 2 doesn't seem to do much. Adam Benini does a great job over there, and his hands, chances are, maybe tied. I don't know what they're telling him. And
focusing in different areas.
That's interesting. That is interesting, and I totally agree with what you're saying. I mean, a certain level or a state championship opportunity, or even on the road in a season that has they have the chance, the coverage, and when you did it, when Channel 2 was doing it, we all took note.
Right.
We all appreciated it. I mean, greatly.
Well, what I would do, see, I had a lot of autonomy. So I would follow whatever teams, and if there was a team going toward a championship, I would always follow them.
Right.
That's what happened with South Park. And we did live stream some games, the Section 6 and maybe Monsignor Martin championships for football and basketball. And here's an interesting thing, that one year when we were live streaming these games, here in Section 6 we have what are called like crossover games. You know, where you win Class A and they have Class A,
Right.
and you have a crossover game. So one year, the girls who we didn't do much live streaming with, they had games. I forget if it was a Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, but we did the girls crossover games on like one day's notice, no promotion, and the numbers we got on the web hits were astronomical.
I was going to ask you about representation
So that was
with women female sports.
That was a
in high
big
school.
thing, and you know, I have we have two daughters, and so I've tried to do women's sports. I'm doing another women's hockey game tomorrow or Thursday. What's today? Wednesday. So so I did try to get a lot of women's sports in there, especially at high school. I would sit in on these corporate teleconferences. Every year they'd have a couple during the summer, and they would invariably be on my days off.
Right. Always.
But you're right. But I had to be there because, you know, these corporations.
Yeah.
So I would go to these things, and the entire time was dedicated mostly to football. And I would say to them, you are missing the boat here. 50% at least of your athletes and families are female. You're football has all the emotion. Well, every sport has emotion.
Every
You
sport.
just happen to really
What?
love football.
Have they watched March Madness?
Yeah.
Come on.
I mean, really,
That's not even my sport.
Well, it could have.
Could
Ask
have.
your dad.
Gosh. I don't know. I fouled out of every basketball game I ever played.
Coach, sometimes we think that's a good thing. It's okay. Use those fouls.
Yeah,
Got them for a reason. That's what Dad said.
That's right. So, you know, so I'm always big on trying to promote women's sports.
Right.
They're fabulous athletes.
Oh, my.
Fabulous.
Well, I knew having two daughters, I mean, I knew coming into the conversation that you would have been a champion for women's sports, right? But it is something to wonder at every level. I mean, I know I saw a huge jump from when I was in high school. You couldn't find volleyball on TV. Maybe Stanford would play in a national championship. And then by the time I was graduating, you could watch volleyball all the time. It was on ESPN. We were on ESPN.
Big Ten Network.
Big Ten Network, all of it. So, like, we in that time saw a huge jump.
So going back to those conference calls, I would tell them all this stuff, and I would say, look, I have two daughters. One's playing volleyball, and one's playing soccer, and you're totally ignoring them for the sake of football. And it was like talking to that wall.
Right.
Yeah.
And they would just go on and have their football plan. And here's another thing that they wanted us to do, and boy, did I hate this. They wanted...
It's the inside scoop.
Well,
Yeah.
their big thing was...
Title of the podcast.
Hey, that was good. Good segue. I like it. What they wanted people to do was they wanted them to send in the video of their kid playing or doing something, scoring a touchdown, scoring a goal, whatever. And I was just like, okay, we can do that, but that's our job, not the
Right.
parents. And I
Yeah.
told them, I said, I'm speaking to you now strictly as a parent. The last thing I want to do when I go to one of my kids' games is take my camera and shoot that and upload it to any website. I want
Right.
to watch the kid play.
Right.
Because
Right.
as a parent, the most magical thing is, did you see that? Was it really our kid?
That
I didn't know
moments,
she
yeah.
could do that,
Right.
right?
Those moments.
Did you know she could do that?
Yeah. And it's, so, you know,
I don't know. I've only experienced soccer shots so far. So
Yeah.
Your kid's
It's been a good experience so for
It's
your
great.
daughter, right?
There
Yeah.
you go. Well,
it's like she can run and kind of kick the ball sometimes. This is awesome.
Well, wait till your kids get a little bit older, and then you'll really have the time of your life, and then you won't want to do anything else but watch the kids play.
Well, and talking about the female sports and women in sports, and especially the message to youth sport organizations. And so many great things are happening, and we certainly want to inspire and influence these youth sport organizations to foster, of course. I mean, for me, and again, I hope that it's a reality for many of our listeners, that it's both. It's boys and girls. I mean,
both,
it's all happening, and it's all happening well. It's all happening at a high level. There's an excitement. I mean, even in leadership, even in the under the big umbrella of sport in the industry, so many more women are not only executing, not only doing wonderful work, but it's growing, and it should grow. And there's a lot of conversation to be had, even coaching. When we talk about this, we've talked about it a little bit through these weeks, but women coaching women versus male coaching women. There's much research being that is established, and it's a continuing research construct that happens across all universities. I know, and it continues to grow. But come on, we're here, and hopefully, like as you say, Stu, the media can come forward. I mean, here at Western New York Coaches, we're trying to influence these youth sport organizations, and we want to recognize these great efforts that foster some of that spirit that you were talking about earlier, that some coaches will bring forward, and perhaps some coaches need mentoring, right? We're here to mentor coaches. That's at the core of our purpose, is for to encourage better coaching, because we know if we encourage better coaching, we can influence that many more young people. Yeah. And that's certainly why we're here.
Yeah. You just hear, you hear LeBron James, you hear
I have a great LeBron James story.
Oh, I thought you were going to say, I talked to LeBron James.
No.
But who does he say he watched on TV to become who he is today?
Michael Jordan, maybe? Michael
Jordan, right? Mm-hmm. Little girls need Michael Jordan. They need a female Michael Jordan to watch on TV. That's it. Yeah, of course. Of course. And there are, though, but
Blair Lipsitz.
They need to stay. Oh gosh, but they need to stay there, and it's important that they see that.
Well,
so true.
My LeBron James story really has very little to do with him, but he played a different position one night. I forgot what it was. I don't know. Like when Magic Johnson switched, scored 42, and they won the championship. Well, LeBron moved up, played power forward or whatever.
Yep.
And he scores like 52 points. And the reporter after the game asked him some question, and LeBron's answer was, "I never want to put a ceiling on myself." And I thought, perfect. So I showed that to my little soccer player, and I said, "Here is what you have to always remember. There's never a ceiling on it. Your job is simple, but not easy." I stole that from Bill Polian and Vic Carucci.
I like that.
I said, your job is simple but not easy. You get better at something every day. And if you just focus on that every day, you'll become a much better player. You'll help your team in ways you won't even realize. But the point was, here's the greatest basketball player of this generation saying, I never want to put a ceiling on myself.
Yeah.
Why are the greats great?
Yeah.
Because generally they're the hardest workers.
It was also interesting. One of LeBron's interviews, they were talking about his shooting range, because he was shooting from far out, and they kind of stumped him with the question. So, what is your shooting range? And he was quiet for a minute, and he just said, "I don't have one."
Define it, right? Why would he define it? Then it would be harder to make the ones outside of that range.
That's right.
It's so true. There are so many. When you watch these, and you must watch NBA games and NFL games and all the games, right? Because I
watch old movies and live sports on TV. Yeah. I try to avoid the news. It depresses me.
Yes. So when you watch these, do you critique the reporters? Is that what you're thinking when you're watching some of these games? Are you thinking, why'd they ask that question? Or that question's not a great question.
Well,
they should have asked this and they would have gotten a better answer.
I like listening to the play-by-play people.
Yeah.
Because those are the people who I think are...
They bring like magic to it, right?
Yes.
It's an art form.
Yes. To me, like, I don't like sideline reporters. I think they bring nothing. I don't care. So there's some very good analysts. But to me, it's about the play-by-play person, no matter who it is.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at the Bennett game, we had a sideline reporter who was a young kid at Ithaca College, and I wanted to talk to him after the game and give him some pointers, but I decided not to do it at that time because the emotions would have been kind of raw.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't real happy because I was on that broadcast, and as the play-by-play guy, I'm the lead of the broadcast. So
Okay.
in other words, it reflects on me.
Okay.
So what this gentleman had done is, before the game, he had 5, 6, 7 points that he wanted to, or little vignettes, little stories that he wanted to tell during the game. But the problem was,
Oh,
none
it didn't
of those
fit.
things had anything to do with what was going on the field.
Yeah.
Wow.
Live, it didn't match up,
So,
the two.
so that is where, see, if you're a coach on the sidelines,
Yeah.
I think some of the best analysts are coaches.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because they know the sport and they can communicate. Because that's
Right.
what they do. You stand in
Yeah.
front of your team, and
Yeah.
here's our offense, here's our defense.
Right.
And I don't care what the sport is. Everybody's got a game plan. A pitcher and a catcher have a game plan, how they're going to approach each hitter, where we're going to shade the infield and the outfield.
Yeah.
So, and this was a young guy, you know.
Throwing something in like that is like a coach throwing in a play that has nothing to do with what's, the entire game plan, what's
Yeah.
going on. Right.
Yeah.
And he also mispronounced the name of the opposing school. You can't do that.
You got to do
Yeah.
a little bit of homework, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So to
A
me, it's
learning
about-
curve, right?
Yes. It's about the play-by-play people to me, because I'm kind of thinking, I really enjoy doing play-by-play, and how would I do this? And it's like anything else. Whenever you're doing something, it's a constantly evolving process. So one day I do a game and you have to develop a style, and I haven't done enough play-by-play that the style isn't completely refined. If that makes any
Gotcha.
sense.
Yeah.
Like your coaching style.
Right.
It's a
It takes time.
constant
Yeah.
process, right?
Yes.
You didn't coach this year the way you coached last year because you got a different team.
Yep.
And you're just hoping that you can find the chemistry on that team that you had
Yeah.
when you won the championship, right?
Right.
And you can't force
That.
kind of thing.
It's so true.
So,
I agree with you. The play-by-play expert really is the lead, as you say.
Yes.
And
And thank goodness they exist.
I know. And
I had to do that. I had to be the color commentary once.
you were an analyst.
I was the analyst, yeah. But
For volleyball.
for volleyball,
Yeah.
not for
And-
football.
oh,
That would
I'm
be
not supposed to-
entertaining.
I'm not supposed to ask questions now?
Yeah.
It went it went okay. I was just shocked at how difficult it was, because I think to myself, I know volleyball. I can go in and talk volleyball. It's not going to be that big of a difference in what I would say at home. But I could not have been more wrong. I was so thankful that the play-by-play, he was there and he knew what he was doing. And he didn't know volleyball that well, but he knew how to call the game. He knew how to take control of it. And, in my ear, they're talking to me as I'm talking, which I thought was slightly unnerving. They're like, okay, say something about number 4 in 3, 2, 1. And you're like, I'm in the middle of another thought. It's hard. It is not easy. And it definitely must take time to get used to.
Did the play-by-play guy make it easy for when he wanted you to say?
Yes.
That's a good play-by-play guy.
He set me up. He would be like, and here you go. And I thank you.
Nice.
Because otherwise, he knew it was my first time doing it, but we could help each other because, like I said, he wasn't always a volleyball person. He didn't always work in volleyball, so he didn't know exactly.
Was that before or
Things.
after you were coaching?
It was before I was wait.
Good question.
Yes, just
That's a
before
good
I was
question,
coaching.
Stu Boyer.
So now,
Now I think it would be so much easier.
of course, because you coached the
Yes.
team for 3 years, right?
Yes.
Right.
And chances are you would have had a chance to see that team, and you would have known what their offense or their defense was.
100%. You have so much more backstory. And, I was coming from the Big Ten. This is a MAC team. So it was just at that time I was playing pro, I think, and coming in. So it was like I didn't have an understanding of the MAC fully.
Well,
at that
I'll tell you,
moment.
every time Hubie Brown is an analyst, I take notes.
He's great, isn't he?
Oh my God, it's amazing.
Yeah.
You know who I really like is Seth Greenberg.
Yeah, you know what? He's
I like
and I see that he's getting. You can see he's getting better, even from his coaching days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like a lot of those guys on the networks. I don't watch as many. Like Syracuse was playing last night, and I couldn't watch them because I knew they're going to lose, and I'm like, Can't lose
Yeah.
to Villanova. It's that old Big East rival.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't think they're very good, and so I get frustrated. So I watched Saving Private Ryan. I was like,
Yeah.
that's it. And then I went to sleep. But so I love watching sports on TV. I don't really care what the sport is. I mean, when the Bills, see, and I'm retired from Channel 2. So now when the Bills are playing, I'm at home. So I don't have to worry about getting stuff on the web,
Yeah.
getting it on the air. I don't have to worry about management wanting
It's
this,
just
wanting
fun to
that.
watch.
Yes, thank you, and it's fabulous.
Wow.
Yes.
Except for
It's
the other
fun
night,
to
it was not
watch.
that much fun,
No,
but-
it was not that much
But that's
fun.
another story.
No, we can't even imagine.
No.
Well, any last thoughts, Coach Blair?
No last thoughts
You
for
know,
me
Stu,
today.
I thought if you could, I'd like to end the podcast with how you ended your broadcast for so many years,
Yeah.
because I really enjoyed that. Could you let the folks know?
Well, I actually stole this because I'm not that creative, but there was a gentleman whose name was Joseph H. Tate. He was the voice of the Cleveland Cavaliers on radio and the Cleveland Indians before that on radio. And years ago, I'm a huge Cleveland baseball fan. So years ago, the Indians had swept a doubleheader from the Yankees, a team I hate more than any team in sport.
And you live in New York.
Let us know how you feel, buddy.
Right?
Except maybe the Patriots
I was just going to say.
or the Flyers.
You got the top three right there.
Yes. And the Indians had swept a doubleheader, and I wrote him a note. And he actually replied to my letter
Wow.
with a really nice, handwritten, I'm assuming he wrote it. But years later, I read about him that he made it a point to answer every phone call
Wow.
and every letter and every whatever. And it was, thanks for the kind words. We share your hope for a brighter future for the Indians. And he sent me one of those little pocket schedules for the next season. And the way he used to close out a game, he used to open a baseball game with, "It's a beautiful day for baseball. Could be 20 degrees and
Yeah.
snowing," and he didn't care.
Good.
And he-
Always.
and I stole his close, which was, I would say I would say, once again, the final score, Bennett 17. No, let me start that again. Once again, the final score, Bennett 17, Lancaster 10. I'm Stu Boyer. Have a good night, everybody. And that is how Joe Tate closed it off, and I stole it, and he passed away recently. And thank you, Joe, for being you, because what a joy he was to listen to.
Oh, that's awesome.
Years ago, my parents, we had this radio. This is before satellite radio. So in my living room, I would plug in, put the headsets on, and through the static, I would listen to Joe Tate. And in the seventh inning stretch, he would say, "Up on your feet, Indians fans! It's stretch time. Indians 5, Tigers
my
3."
gosh.
After 6, and he was just fabulous.
See that? Another mentor
Yes, and he never knew it. And
You're right.
I listened to him do Dick Bosman's no-hitter and you know, all
Yeah.
those moments. So
Yeah.
to me, Joe Tate, best ever.
Well, I thank Joe too, because I used to look forward to you saying it too. I appreciate it. I did.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for being with us. This is Western New York Coaches signing off. See you next time.